Welcome, I'm Catherine Hadro, and this is EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Protecting Hyde. As House Democrats continue their push to abolish the Hyde Amendment and other pro-life protections in a drafted spending bill, we speak with Representative Hinson of Iowa to discuss her commitment to protecting life and preventing tax dollars from paying for abortion. The Catholic Strategy. A pro-life Catholic is on a mission to share inside information about how the abortion industry originally deceived Catholics to vote for pro-abortion politicians. Hear what she learned firsthand from former abortionist turned pro-lifer Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Royal Mess. A UK environmental charity awards Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for only having 2 children. Hear the details as we speak out. And biking for babies. A group of cyclists embark on a week-long journey around the country to raise money for pregnancy centers. We hear how they hope their pedals lead to unborn protection. A House subcommittee released a draft spending bill this week that eliminates the Hyde Amendment and other pro-life protections, meaning taxpayers would be forced to pay for abortions and healthcare providers would be forced to perform or refer for abortions.
I was very disappointed to see also reflected in this bill presented today is the removal of the Hyde Amendment, which protects life and prevents federal taxpayer-funded abortions. Since it was enacted in 1976, it's estimated that this provision has saved more than 2 million lives while protecting the conscience rights of the great majority of Americans.
That's Oklahoma Representative Tom Cole slamming the proposed spending bill for its removal of Hyde. The U.S. House of Representatives Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and related agencies removed the long-standing Hyde Amendment and key federal anti-discrimination protections for pro-life healthcare workers and institutions. The House Appropriations Committee will mark up the bill before it's sent to the House floor for a vote and eventually the Senate. Cardinal Timothy Dolan, chair of the U.S. Bishops' Committee for Religious Liberty, and Archbishop Joseph Naumann, the U.S. Bishops' pro-life chair, released a statement saying in part, quote, "This is the most extreme pro-abortion appropriations bill that we have seen, effectively mandating healthcare professionals to participate in abortion and forcing American citizens to pay for abortion with their tax dollars. By eliminating the Hyde Amendment and other Hyde-like policies, the financial fruits of Americans' labor would advance the destruction of the smallest, most vulnerable humans." Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Representative Hinson of Iowa, who sits on the House Appropriations Committee. Congresswoman, welcome to the show. First off, what is your reaction to the Subcommittee on Labor, HHS, Education, and related agencies draft spending bill that eliminates the Hyde Amendment?
Yeah, well, Catherine, it's good to be with you. And what we've seen here on Capitol Hill in Congress is a direct assault on life and our values. And so I think it's been really, really important to add my voice to the mix on the Appropriations Committee, because it's very clear Democrats in control of Congress have done a complete reverse course on many of these policies that have been for years bipartisan in protecting life. And so I'm upset with the tactic that the Democrats have taken to beat these proposals down. But I think it's really important more now than ever that you have moms like me on the committee who are speaking truth about these issues and protecting taxpayers at the same time fighting for life.
As a U.S. representative, what is your commitment to protecting and upholding the Hyde Amendment, especially in your role on the Appropriations Committee?
Yeah, well, I think for decades, as I mentioned, this has been a bipartisan issue, which is why it's so disturbing that right now, at this point in time, the Democrats have chosen to divert to a different course. But ultimately, I think where that bipartisan agreement has been is that no matter your opinion on life, that taxpayers shouldn't be paying for abortions. And so that's a fight that I am absolutely committed to fighting here, because ultimately when I go back home to my district, that's what my constituents are telling me. They don't want to pay for abortions both here at home and around the world. So that's why I specifically have been introducing several different measures in the committee process to stand up not only for the Hyde Amendment, but the Helms Amendment as well. You know, it's important to talk about some of the atrocities that are happening across the globe, specifically in communist China. They do not value life in communist China, and I think it's the wrong message to send to taxpayers both in Iowa and across this country that we are wanting to send our taxpayer dollars there to pay for coerced abortions and sterilizations. That's just flat out wrong. It's unacceptable, and it's something I'll continue to fight for in our appropriations process.
Thank you for highlighting those other pro-life amendments as well. They are also crucial to the pro-life cause. Congresswoman, there were a record number of pro-life women elected to the U.S. House this congressional term. You are one of those freshman pro-life women. Do you think this block of women, which includes yourself, can make a difference in Congress when it comes to protecting life? And what kind of opportunity is there right now that there are so many strong female pro-life voices in the U.S. House?
Well, it's an incredible opportunity. Number one, we add credibility to the conversation. I'm a working mom. 10 and 8 are my boys, and they're the light of my life, and I think every life deserves to have a chance. I just recently introduced an amicus brief with Senator Tom Cotton and dozens of other members of the House and the Senate to stand up for Down syndrome babies as well, because we believe that they should have a chance at life. Everybody should have that chance. It's fundamental to our beliefs, and I think we do have now that added voice with more Republican pro-life women in Congress. And I think it's really going to be our goal and mission to change hearts and minds. You know, clearly, as I mentioned, the Democrats in Congress have taken that turn. Only one Democrat voted in committee for any of our pro-life provisions. So I'm going to be continuing to tell that story and continuing to advocate for pro-life policies. And I know the other women who were elected who came in with those same values and beliefs will do the same.
We have only about a minute left, Congresswoman, but I do want to get your reaction. Recently, Catholic Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi refused to answer whether she believed a 15-week-old unborn baby is a human being. She is the Speaker of the House. You are a U.S. representative. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would call on the Speaker to change her mind on that. If she is really sticking to her values that she claims she is, Speaker Pelosi, a 15-week-old baby is a baby, and it is a life. And for her to say otherwise, I think, is completely misguided and wrong. And she's the leader of that conference as well. So I think when you see these Democrats in Congress veering the other way on this issue, it's follow the leader here. So I would expect more out of Speaker Pelosi, and I'll continue to, again, fight for life here because every life deserves a chance. And that's our job and mission here in Congress.
Representative Ashley Hinson of Iowa, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming on to the show.
Glad to be with you, Catherine. Thank you.
Joining us now on Skype to continue this conversation is Autumn Christensen, Federal Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List. Autumn, welcome back. Is this new proposed House spending budget more extreme than even President Biden's 2022 budget proposal when it comes to abortion?
It's a great question. You know, the Biden budget would have funded abortion for the Department of Health and Human Services. So that would be programs like the Medicaid program and the Medicare program, and that's certainly bad enough. But the House Appropriations Committee, which is the committee responsible to fund the government, responded and said they would do even more to promote their radical abortion agenda. They have now funded abortion overseas. They funded abortion for prisoners. They funded abortion in the Peace Corps. They funded abortions in the nation's capital. They funded abortion for federal employees. They've inserted prohibitions so that future presidents wouldn't be able to take pro-life action. They've plussed up funding for radical abortion groups like Planned Parenthood. And of course, also the focus this week is the funding for abortion through Medicaid, Medicare, and across federal health programs like community health centers. And all of that is happening in the context of the Hyde Amendment in the Labor, Health, and Human Services Appropriations Bill that's being considered.
Autumn, to that point, this proposed House budget this week does include money for the Health and Human Services Department. Why does that make it especially alarming that pro-life protections have been repealed?
Well, this is the department with a massive amount of funding that funds Medicaid, Medicare, community health centers, really the bulk of our assistance to help people pursue health care. And of course, healthcare should not include abortion. There are great needs to support the health and well-being of women, of their children, of their unborn children. Abortion should not be a part of that. And pro-life Americans really have to make sure that their voices are heard by letting lawmakers know that when you fund something, you get more of it. And the last thing we need more of is brutal, painful abortions.
Absolutely. And we'll provide a way for our viewers to reach their lawmakers after this. Autumn, can you break down for us where are we in the big picture budget process? As our viewers monitor the situation on Capitol Hill, what should they be keeping in mind?
Yeah, so far the emphasis has been, of course, first the president's budget proposal, and then second the actions that the House has taken. The House Appropriators, as I went through that litany of things that they have done to try to pay for abortion and funnel money into the pockets of the abortion industry. So that's where the emphasis has been up until now. But as the summer comes to a close, the focus will then transfer over to the Senate, because as your viewers know, the Senate, of course, is required to pass a bill, and the House and the Senate have to be in agreement before that bill would then go to the president for a signature. And in theory, all of this funding work is supposed to be done by the end of September. But I think we know in all practicality what will really happen is the Congress will kick the can down the road, and we will be talking about this issue of abortion funding and fighting just as hard as we can in defense of unborn children right up until Christmas, when is the most likely date when these funding bills are finally resolved.
That's helpful guidance. Thank you for that. We have less than a minute, Autumn, but would you say the budget battle is a top pro-life priority right now? And is this an area pro-life lawmakers can make a difference amid a pro-abortion majority?
Yes and yes. I know sometimes it seems like what difference can we make, but we have to remember that Pelosi has just a 5-vote margin in the House, and Schumer has just a 1-vote margin, 50-50 Senate, but 1 vote with the vice president's vote in the Senate. And of course, the filibuster is key, and Senate Democrat Joe Manchin is key. So we can win this battle, but we're going to have to fight really, really hard, and constituents have got to let their senators and their members of Congress know just how important this is. The Senate can block the litany of anti-life policies that I mentioned, but they have to hear from the American people to know that they must. They cannot give up an inch for at the expense of the unborn.
That is a great reminder for us all. Autumn Christensen with the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
The Hyde Amendment has ensured Americans are not forced to pay for abortion on demand with their tax dollars for over 4 decades now. But as we've been reporting here, President Joe Biden now wants to repeal the Hyde Amendment. His proposed 2022 budget guts the long-standing Hyde Amendment, and now we're seeing pro-abortion Democrats in the House push to repeal Hyde as well. That brings us to this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com and tell your members of Congress to save the Hyde Amendment. This is how our call to action works. When you go to our website and enter in your information, we will draft letters to your specific senator and U.S. representatives urging them to support Hyde and other pro-life protections. You have the freedom to make any changes and edits to our drafted online letter, and then you simply click Submit to directly send the pro-life message to your lawmakers. Go to prolifeweekly.com and tell your members of Congress to save the Hyde Amendment. This week, we're taking a deep dive into how the abortion industry originally deceived some Catholics into supporting pro-abortion politicians. Pro-life Catholic Terry Beatley, president of the Hosea Initiative, is on a mission to share with Americans inside information she learned from the co-founder of NARAL himself, Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Nathanson was a prominent abortionist who famously converted to the pro-life movement and eventually the Catholic Church after witnessing a live ultrasound. Near his death, Nathanson told Beatley how abortion group NARAL convinced Catholic Americans they could vote for pro-abortion politicians. It was called the Catholic Strategy. Joining us now in studio is Terry Beatley, president of Hosea Initiative and author of What if we've been wrong? Keeping my promise to America's abortion king. Terry, great to see you. Welcome back. Okay, break this down for us. What was the Catholic strategy exactly that Dr. Nathanson helped to develop when he worked in the abortion industry, and one he called the most brilliant political strategy?
That's right. The Catholic strategy was a political plan to separate Catholics' religious conviction from their legislative judgment, or you can reverse that, their legislative judgment from their Catholic upbringing, that magisterium. Dr. Nathanson called this the most brilliant political strategy of all time. So it was very deceptive, it was stealthy, and it's led to the death of millions of American babies. The purpose of it was to deceive, and then, this is a direct quote from him, to use to great effect Catholics to advance abortion onto America by undermining America's historical protection of unborn life, and by also undermining divine law and the moral authority of the church. I know that's a mouthful, but it was very deceptive. They devised this back in the late 1960s. It was the co-founder of NARAL, Lawrence Lader, and Dr. Nathanson. They executed it, and the vast majority of American Catholics have no idea the manipulation and the deception.
Absolutely. Thank you for getting the word out there. In your opinion, Terry, has the abortion industry been successful in convincing Catholics they can support pro-abortion policies and politicians since implementing the Catholic strategy?
Absolutely. And as glaring evidence for this, on January 9th, 1971, Lawrence Lader called together an emergency board of director meeting for NARAL. He was so afraid of what the opposition elements were going to do with this new revelation, because abortion had now been legalized in the state of New York, and it had been less than a year, but something was happening. And Lawrence Lader and Bernard Nathanson, they were afraid of what the media was going to do with this, as well as the Catholic Church. And what they were embarrassed about, particularly Lawrence Lader, was the rising number of second trimester babies who were surviving second trimester abortion. He had no empathy for the babies, no empathy, just like the Democrats now, okay? And so he called together this emergency meeting to talk about and to plan what are they going to do with the media and possibly the Catholic Church. So your question is, have they had victory? Absolutely, because today in this city, Washington, D.C., the average Catholic U.S. Senator and the House of Representatives, the average, well, actually more than the average, 80% or higher, vote against pro-life legislation. So the question is, do you really think the abortion industry fears the Catholic Church like they did on January 9, 1971? And the answer is, of course, no. They don't fear it at all.
Catholics need to stand strong on the life issue and support the church's teaching. You're on a mission right now to educate the U.S. about this. Tell us about Tuesdays with Terry that you're doing throughout July and August.
Yeah, when my book came out back in 2016, for the next 2 years, I flew all over the country, probably 30 different states, speaking at different events and training, educating. And then after coronavirus, we decided that we just leverage teleconference, video conferencing. So every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. Pacific Time, we hold Zoom call meetings, and it takes about an hour, depending on the number of questions, and I do a deep dive into NARAL's Catholic strategy, and I promise you it's what every American needs to know. If they're worried about, dignity of human life, or if they're reconsidering, maybe they've had this wrong for the past 10, 20, 30 years, this issue of legalized abortion. But we do a deep dive. It's free. There's no registration. And we encourage every American to get onto these calls. And I promise you, you will learn a piece of American history that, for the most part, has not been taught anywhere. Anywhere.
And I want to let our viewers know how they can find that. That's to go to Tuesdays at Terry, go to Hosea 4, the number 4, YOU.org. Terry, we have less than a minute left, but did Dr. Nathanson have any insight on how we can refute these lies that you can be Catholic and support pro-abortion policies? The last word.
Absolutely. When I sat with him on December 1st, 2009, the last question I had for him is, I said, Dr. Nathanson, I know you're too sick to get your message out anymore. if you have a message for America, tell me what it is, and I promise you I'll deliver it across our country until it becomes common knowledge or until Roe v. Wade's overturned. So the answer to your question is he said yes. He said continue teaching the strategy of how he deceived America. It's with 8 points of propaganda. The Catholic strategy is just one of the 8. We teach the other 7 on the Tuesday calls as well. And then he said, tell America that the co-founder of NARAL says to love one another. Abortion is not love. Stop the killing. The world needs more love, and I'm all about love now. And that's how we're going to do it. We've got to love other Americans with the truth, and it's done.
Thank you for getting the word out. And viewers can find Terry's book available on EWTN's religious catalog. Go to EWTNRC.com. It's item number 3482. Terry Beatley, thank you so much for coming back.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, a British charity recognizes a royal couple for their decision to have only 2 children. I speak out next. Plus, biking for babies, hear how a group of bicyclists this week are raising awareness for the unborn after this. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. A British charity awards a royal couple for deciding to have only 2 children. That is this week's Speak Out segment. The British charity Population Matters announced they are presenting a special award and nearly $700 to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle for their decision to limit their family to 2 kids. In a 2019 British Vogue interview with Jane Goodall, the Duke of Sussex said this about having children, quote, 2 maximum. But I've always thought this place is borrowed, and surely being as intelligent as we all are, or as evolved as we all are supposed to be, we should be able to leave something better behind for the next generation. Population Matters and their award announcement called that an enlightened decision, which affirmed a, quote, smaller family is also a happy family. The environmental group on their website argues that children can be expensive and having fewer opens up lifestyle choices and opportunities. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have a 2-year-old son, Archie, and a 1-month-old daughter, Lilibet Diana. They revealed in late 2020 they suffered a miscarriage last year. St. John Paul II, in his message for the 1990 World Day of Peace, said, quote, if an appreciation of the value of the human person and of human life is lacking, we will also lose interest in others and in the earth itself. We are called to respect the earth our Creator made, yes, but we must also respect the human life our Creator makes. The answer is to care for both the environment and human life. What a tragedy it would be if every family intentionally stopped being open to life after 2 kids solely because of environmental concerns. Personally, my mother is the youngest of 13 children. My husband is the youngest of 10 children. If it had not been for my grandmother's openness to life, I would not be born. If it was not for my mother-in-law's openness to life, I don't think I would be married. No, not every couple is called to have or will be blessed with a large family, but to shut off God's plan for your family is to shut out the Creator himself. The more people there are, the more love there is, and the more opportunities there are for this beautiful planet of ours. This week, a group of cyclists are pedaling across the country for the pro-life cause. Biking for Babies embarked on its cross-country ride on July 11th. 50 college students and young adults are riding across the country, an average of 100 miles a day. That's a combined 2,700 miles. Money raised by the cyclists will go towards U.S. pregnancy resource centers. This is the 12th year for the national ride. Cyclists will meet in St. Louis, Missouri on July 17th for a celebration of life. And joining us now via Skype is Nikki Biese, Executive Director of Biking for Babies, who just had a baby herself just days ago. Congratulations, Nikki, and welcome to the show. There are 50 cyclists participating in this year's Biking for Babies. Each of them started out from different areas in the country. Can you break down how this national ride works exactly?
Yes, Catherine, thank you for having me. Yes, so we actually onboard our missionaries in March and they undergo a formation program. So they've been training physically, mentally, spiritually with us since March. And now this is the week. They ride anywhere from 600 to 800 miles. We start we have 4 different routes, as you said, biking in Christ's Cross across the country. We start in Wisconsin, Ohio, Mississippi, and Colorado and bike into St. Louis. And the goal really is to be visible signs of Christ's sacrifice. We wear bright yellow jerseys, trying to really get attention to change people's hearts and minds about a world that responds to crisis and that there's no need for abortion in that world.
That's beautiful. For viewers who may be hearing about this and asking, well, how does bicycling make a difference in protecting the unborn from abortion? What's your response to that?
It does. It opens up a conversation. People see us along the way and say, what are you doing? You're doing what? Biking how many miles in the heat of July? And we say, yes, absolutely, because we need to uplift these mamas and these babies who are in these unplanned pregnancies, crisis situations, and they need support. And so we're here to start that conversation. It's very non-confrontational, very loving, and people start to understand, okay, I see what you're doing here. What are these pregnancy resource centers? And we're able to share their stories of lives saved, stories of lives lost, and people realize that these centers need our support because they're providing alternatives to abortion that respect the dignity of both the mom and her unborn child.
Absolutely, and I understand the goal is to surpass a cumulative $1 million donation mark. How did this goal come about, and can you explain exactly how pregnancy centers are benefiting from this event?
Absolutely. So in our now 12 years, we have raised over $800,000 for our centers. And so we are hoping to surpass the $1 million mark to pregnancy resource centers in our 12 years this year, which would require us to raise over $225,000 for them. So we are at about $150,000 of the way towards that $225,000 goal, which is super exciting. The pregnancy resource centers that partner with us, every missionary is paired one-to-one missionary to a pregnancy resource center, and they really get to know them, know their mission, learn what they need to be supported and to serve these women. And every center receives that missionary advocacy to raise awareness for their center and also a financial contribution at the end of the year.
That's so beautiful. Nikki, we have 1 minute left, but can you tell us about the Celebration for Life in St. Louis, Missouri?
Absolutely. So it's this Saturday. It's at about 4 o'clock. People can start heading out to St. Joseph's in Manchester. And all the information can be found on our Facebook page or on our website, bikingforbabies.com. We'll gather. We'll have the missionaries ride in on their last mile. We'll hoop and holler and cry because they just did this insane athletic feat for women and children and families that they're likely never going to meet. And then we'll celebrate life and we'll hear from our missionaries, enjoy a free meal. Everybody's welcome. We want to see St. Louis out in support of our missionaries and of life.
Wow, well, what a week. Nikki Biese, Executive Director for Biking for Babies. Thank you so much for coming on, and go get some well-deserved rest.
Thank you so much, Catherine. God bless you.
God bless. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, we'd love to hear from you. Find us on social media at EWTN Pro-Life on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're there. You can also send us a message by emailing prolifeweekly@ewtn.com. We love to hear from you. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.